Lists are one of the most powerful data types in Python. If you're working with Python code, there's a really good chance that you're going to be working with lists frequently. Compared to other programming languages, lists in Python have a lot of features that make them easy to work with. So let's explore how they work. So let's launch Python, the interactive interpreter here. There we go. So in the past, when we created a variable, we might have like first name equals Alice. That variable only holds a single string value. But what if we have multiple people? We could create a variable that holds multiple values. So I'll type names here, follow the example code, equals, so we're assigning a new variable. I'm going to use this square bracket here. Square brackets contain our list items. So I'll put Alice in quotes and a comma. Put that comma outside of the quotation mark. We're not writing English here, we're writing Python code. I'll put another quote, Bob, close off that name with a quotation mark. So I'm separating the strings with commas. We've got Eve, and just for fun, the number 42. I'm going to close off that list with another bracket and hit enter. So what actually happened here? I assigned the value of the names variable to a list. That list has 4 distinct values in it. The string Alice, the string Bob, the string Eve, and the number 42. Some programming languages, by default, they don't let you store different data types in one collection like this, like in an array. Python gives us that flexibility, which is nice. So let's investigate this. Previously, when we used the len function to check the length of something, if I did len first name, for example, it would tell me 5 because there's 5 characters in the string Alice. If I run len on the names variable now, it gives me 4. So why 4? It's because there are 4 elements in the list. So it's telling me there's 4 different items in this names list. So this is frequently used. We need to keep track of a lot of stuff. Imagine you've got 100 websites that you need to check to make sure that they're all working properly. You might store each website as a string in a list to keep all of your data organized in one list variable. We can print out a list. So if I print names here, it's going to show me all the values again, so I can access each of them. We can add and remove elements from this list. So if we're processing things, we might need to update our list. I can use the names.remove function. And what do I want to remove? I'll remove Bob. Doesn't print the output, but if I print names again, Bob is gone. So that works. So here I use the variable name names.remove to call that remove method on that list. So notice this is different than when we were working with strings, where if I called first name.upper, this is Alice, but if I just write first name here, its value was not updated. So strings are immutable. Lists are mutable. You can change them. You can update them without having to overwrite the whole list again. So we can remove items. We can also add items. Like if I print names, we might be sad we lost Bob. So let's add Bob back. So I can use names.append Bob. If I print names again, we've got Alice, Eve, 42, and Bob. So okay, Bob's back. We like Bob. Bob's at the end of the list now, because by default, when you append, you'll be added to the end. That's perfectly fine. Remember how if we take a look at first name, it's Alice. If I say first name, square bracket, 1, what's that going to give me? It's going to give me L, because the index starts at 0. So 1 is the second character in the string. That's that Alice. We can access lists in a similar way. So I can print names bracket 0. That will be the first element in the names list. So what's that going to give me? Should give me Alice. I can hit the up arrow key to access that code and just change that 0 to a 1. Gives me Eve. Hit the up arrow key again. 2 this time. Gives me 42. And index 3, the fourth element in the list, should give me Bob. And it does. What's going to happen? What if I change that to 4? Computer program crashes. List index out of range. I only have 4 elements, but names bracket 4 is looking for the 5th element because we're using our 0-based counting method. And so that's out of range. Our program would crash here if we were running a larger program. That's a problem. So what can you put in a list? Well, any Python object, really. So you can have a list of lists. So if I say schools equal, so I'm creating a new variable called schools, and I'll put these brackets here. That's my list. Then I'm going to type the contents inside of it. Sometimes I like to have that opening and closing bracket there just to make sure I'm doing this correctly. So here I could put in quotes South High, quote, comma, some city. So this is a list with 2 strings. So after that first closing bracket, I'll create another list, North High, quote, comma, quote, other city. And it's going on to a second line here. Not a problem. I'm just going to keep typing confidently. And I need 2 brackets to the end. Hopefully my wrapping didn't screw anything up there. All right, we should be good. I'm going to print schools and see what the heck is inside of this. And I see brackets here. So that's telling me this is a list data type. So if I didn't see any of the previous code, if somebody ran print schools and I saw this content, these brackets would tell me I'm working with a list. So how many elements are in the schools list? If I check the length, what's the length going to be? Let's try it out. Len schools. 2 elements. Interesting. So why 2 elements? I've got 4 strings total in all of these objects. How would I access North High school information? I don't want anything about South High. How would I access North High? Well, I would use brackets, and North High is the second element in that school's list. So I'd put a 1 there, and it should give me the information for North High, and it does. So what else could I do here with this list? What if I wanted to access other city now? Here's a tricky one. So I would go into the schools list into the first element, all of this, sorry, the index of 1, not the first element, apologize. I've got 2 strings in this list. So if I want the second one, if I wanted just to print out other city, I could add another bracket index there to access the element at index 1. It'll give me other city. So we can start to dig into these individual elements in the list. So if all that data is still there, I haven't modified anything. If I just type schools here, all that data is still there. What if I wanted to get South High? How would I get that string? See if you can solve this problem. So I know I want to start with the schools list variable. I want the first item in the list, so we're using index. Index is starting at 0, so the first item will be index 0. And now in this list, I want the first index starting at 0 still. So I would use schools 0, 0 with those brackets, and it will tell me South High. Should we go another level deep? What if I wanted to get the capital H in South High? What could I do? So what's the index of the H here? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Index 6. Gives me the capital H. Should we keep building? Let's keep doing it. What if we want a lowercase h? What would I do? Well, that's a string, right? I can call lower on that. And it'll give me a lowercase h. So we can start to dig in, massage, manipulate this data, access data in different ways. We can call the functions that apply. The last thing in this chain here was a string, the word South High. Because that's a string, I can call the lower function on it and access the data that way. So lists are very powerful. They're used all the time in Python. We can remove items from a list, we can append items to a list, and we can access the elements of a list specifically using the indices. And then, depending on the data type, we can call methods, do math, do whatever we need to do with that data. For example, I had names previously. Names 0, 1, 2. Names 2 was 42. I could do names 2 plus 10. We could do math on that. But what would happen if I did names 3 plus 10? We get a problem because I can't do math on the string value Bob. So it's important to know what data types we're working with, especially because in Python we might be mixing and matching data types within our lists.